definitely kind of weird to admit, or I guess pretend, that Doki Doki Literature Club needs an explanation. Doki Doki Literature Club was a game that was originally released for free in 2017 for both Steam and itch.io. The selling point was the fact that the game was a visual novel, but something that isn't a secret now, and wasn't really a secret then either, is that it's actually also a psychological horror game. It unironically became one of my favorite games pretty immediately after playing it. Finally, a few years later, we have Doki Doki Literature Club Plus. And as the trailer shows, that plus is new artwork, new soundtracks, and the biggest plus of all, a $15 price tag. Now, I did say that the game originally was free. However, if you gave it $10 or more, you would end up getting some bonus stuff. So with the way you look at it, Doki Doki Literature Club Plus is either $15 more than the original experience, or only $5 more than the original experience. And this obviously isn't including people who were so impressed with the game they gave the creator more than $10. One of those people being me. And the thing with the trailer is, the thing that did get my interest most specifically is, well, the fact that there is so much more additional content. Because easy to admit, since the game now does have a price tag, it's fair to say that the game did probably need a little bit more, especially since some people did complain that they didn't think the game was long enough, or even most of all, the game's creator Dan Salvato specifically mentioned that he never felt the character of Natsuki had enough to grow with compared to the others. So when even the creator thinks maybe you should add more to the game, yeah, it makes total sense and is way more justifiable that the $15 version, no matter what, is the one that has a bit more than the free version. And yet, on the same exact side of that hand, one of my favorite games is Doki Doki Literature Club, and part of the reason it is the way that game is specifically spaced out and paced out. So I already know ahead of time I'm going to like this new version of the game. What this video is going to be about is, well, which version of the game am I ultimately going to like more? Doki Doki Literature Club Plus is on Steam, the Nintendo Switch, the PlayStation 4 and 5, and there's the version I'm playing, which is on the Xbox One. It's also on the Xbox Series, but I don't have one of those right now, and I have no clue when the hell I am going to get one of those, so this is just the regular old base Xbox One. So upon starting the game up, the first thing I notice is this new UI, which imitates a PC desktop, which was something I genuinely was not expecting. I expected a different and new updated main menu. And by having this fake desktop, the game can stay exactly the same as it was when it first released on PC. It took the easy, simple, and kind of genius solution of just emulating a PC. And with this new desktop also comes all the new features. You can easily go to the music to see where the soundtrack is, which will include all the old tracks and all the new tracks. You just have to unlock them over time. And then of course there's photos where you get, the character CGs, the poems, and even some secret unlockable stuff. And the best part about all these are, every single thing that you can find in photos, you can use as a desktop background for the PC. And it even nets you an achievement the first time you do it. And when you go through the thing called Files, you notice there's a light ARG going on in here as well. Some nice bonus extra content stuff that builds up the world within the story of this game, while still not changing the story of the game, which is good. As I said, I can't really hide the fact this is a horror game anymore, and as a big horror fan, something that is kind of unique to the horror genre is that sometimes if you have too many answers, you lose a lot of the scariness because your imagination fills it in more than anything else. So to have more of this world that doesn't give you any answers to the questions you were asking in the first game, and it really just gives you more questions, that's a good way to keep building up the world. So originally here, I'd recorded a bit where I talked about how the Nintendo Switch version, as well as the PlayStation 4 and 5 version, had received a patch because those earlier versions had some problems with save game data, and on a lesser scale to some people, there was problems with achieving 100% completion. The achievements wouldn't pop for that. And I was going to mention how Microsoft still hadn't approved the patch for the Xbox version, but as I was playing more of the game to get ready for this video, the patch got approved and passed through. So, that's not really important anymore. But I'm still going to keep in the segments where I talk about some pretty inoffensive glitches that I got while I was playing. I didn't see anyone else talk about these when it came to talk about the patches, so I'm not sure if these are something that are fixed or not in the current version. And also regardless, because they were so inoffensive, they're more humorous anecdotes than anything else, so I'm still going to leave them in. Now all of these glitches are stuff I encountered in Act 1, since, well, I can assume any glitches after that are just part of the game. And there's really only two that I got. One is one that honestly kind of came from more stubbornness from my end. See, there is an achievement for getting a perfect poem for all of the main characters. And despite the fact that there is an in-game cheat sheet to tell you which words are right for which character, and the fact that this game is around 4 years old, so that is easy to just find online, I just tried to brute force the right words, so every time I got one that was wrong, I just loaded. But because I kept constantly loading, sometimes the screen would turn black for a second or so, and one of the words would load before the rest of the page. And it wasn't even a word I needed, it was just the bottom left word for every single time the thing would finally fully load. And considering I doubt most people are probably brute forcing the way to get the perfect poems, wouldn't really be surprised if I'm the first person to mention this glitch. And then of course there's the second one, which wasn't a fault of mine, so it's more deserving to be patched out. But it's also one that I really can't take much umbrage with. You see, I was speaking to Yuri at this point in time, and I was like, this is a pretty good point to save. So I saved, exit out the menu, and somehow saving the game caused Yuri to just vanish. She just kinda evaporated out of existence right before my eyes. And then, right after that was when this line of dialogue popped up, which was so thematically accurate, I laughed so hard I almost fell out of my chair. And then of course that leaves the one last thing. So I'll tell you right now what I expected the side stories to be. I expected the side stories to be very short little things that just kind of gave us a little bit more flavor text with these characters. And personally I think that would have been just fine as it was. And instead what kind of happened was, well, sort of the same situation with the main game itself. It kind of blows away the expectations. For starters, they're not short. Each story is divided into 2 parts, as you can see here, and each part will run you about half an hour of time. Now, if you can call the main game the kind of visual novel that actually has more gameplay than some, you can call these side stories the type of visual novels that really are just there to tell you a story. There's no moral choices, anything like that really, it's just click when you're done reading. And for something that's just a side story, I think that's fine. That's something I really only have a problem with when the whole game is like that. Now the way to unlock these is by doing special poems in the main game. So you will have a connection to these characters before you start playing the side stories, even if this is the first time you've ever played Doki Doki Literature Club. Due to how these play out, you could almost kind of call them, say, side spin-off content that adds a bit more characterization and world building than the main game did, which really was all I was expecting, and yet the emotional resonance that these get somehow surprised me despite how fond I am of the main game. I will also say this, and I'm gonna try to be careful with the way I word this, cause even though it's an older game now, there's some stuff that's spoilery, and some stuff that I just want to be careful when I talk about here. The main game does talk about mental health, and the original game did get a lot of good positive attention and praise for that kind of thing, and some people didn't think it worked that well, or at the very least weren't super happy that some of it was just for horror. They felt it was kind of shock value-y. And I may not personally agree with that latter statement, because I really do feel that it worked especially good for what it was. I'm not really going to deride anybody for really wishing that the game just took them entirely seriously for dramatic effect, to really sit down and have this conversation, since some bits of the game really were very good at doing that. So without trying to spoil the side stories too much, this is the chance if you were that kind of person. If you weren't super happy that Doki Doki Literature Club in the latter half sort of just dropped a lot of the serious discussion stuff for mental health issues just so it could focus on the horror aspect of it, you're gonna like these side stories a lot. I think it was fair to say you were probably expecting the highest of ratings from me, a guy who thinks the original is so good it's one of their favorite games. But I do want to say, if you think that that bias is a little bit too much, I do still think that all the side content that is added here, it is very much worth the $15. Everything that made the original game great is here, and there's a lot of other stuff that thankfully make it better instead of just weighing it down by being too long or too needlessly added in. The new world building is good, the desktop ideas are really good. I really think the side stories are not just a great addition for me, but just so happen to fix some of the criticisms some people threw at the game. All in all, yeah, this is the better version of the experience. And the original free version is still there if you're a little bit hesitant for the $15 price tag. But for me, both are a 10 out of 10. And while I do still want to say, the free version is still there, so dip your toes into that one, especially since that original free version means a lot to me, I think I am just going to ultimately say, go with Plus. Go with the paid version this time, because not only do you get a choice of where you get to play the game, much more so than the free version, I think the additions ultimately make it a stronger version. It's not weighed down like I was afraid. It's not slowed down like I was afraid. It's the exact same game with the right amount of improvements in the exact right places. This is still ultimately the visual novel that other visual novels need to really start taking some lessons from.
Dim your eyes. Too late.
The ink flows down into a dark puddle. Just move your hand right the way into his heart. But in this world of infinite choices, what will it take just to find that special day? What will it take just to find that special day?